Can you trust the Bible? If you are looking at the Christian faith, then this is one of the most important questions. The Bible makes the claim that it is the very word of God, and within its pages, amongst its many statements, are the claims that it is the way to Him, it is forgiveness from sin, and it leads to everlasting life. In this series of videos, I will be looking at whether the Bible we have today is the same as what was written down by the authors. That is to say, is it a reliable transmission of the original, or has it been corrupted? I will also look at questions such as how do we know it is actually the Word of God and not just the words of some person seeking to promote themselves and gain a following. To start with, I will be doing a subsection on can we trust the Gospels, and to kick that off, I will take a brief look at the Gospels as a bit of an introduction. The four Gospels that have been accepted into the canon of the Bible are Matthew, Mark, Luke and John. What is often overlooked is how significant and useful it is to have four versions of the Gospels. It's very rare to have historical records from that period with so much detail that were written so close to the events. Because we have the four Gospels, as we dig into the evidence and compare the accounts, we can get a very precise picture of the man Jesus and his sayings and his teachings. Two of the writers were eyewitnesses to Jesus' life, namely Matthew and John. Both were disciples of Jesus and lived and travelled with him from the early days of Jesus' ministry. Matthew worked as a tax collector for the Romans, and John was a fisherman. The other two were Mark and Luke. Mark, also known as John Mark, was the cousin of Barnabas, and his mother was called Mary. Mary had a house in Jerusalem and she was one of the early believers. It is these facts that show that Mark was near to the action, even if he wasn't one of the 12 apostles. He was also close to Peter and spent time helping him in his ministry. It is reasonable to say that he would have learnt a lot about Jesus from Peter. It's also not beyond the realms of possibility that when Mark wrote his gospel, it was actually Peter that was dictating the gospel to him. Some have argued for this. Luke, who was possibly a Gentile believer, i.e. not Jewish, and also was a medical doctor, was Paul's helper on his journeys around the Mediterranean and Asia Minor. He begins his gospel with this statement: "Many have undertaken to draw up an account of the things that have been fulfilled amongst us, just as they were handed down to us by those who from the first were eyewitnesses and servants of the Lord. With this in mind, since I myself have carefully investigated everything from the beginning, I too decided to write an orderly account for you, most excellent Theophilus, so that you may know the certainty of the things that you have been taught." So what he is saying here is that he got his evidence from eyewitnesses and that he took great care to be precise. Luke was also the author of the book of Acts, which means he wrote more words down that went into the New Testament than any other author, and this includes Paul. When were the Gospels written? Well, none of the Gospels come with a date stamp, but scholars from various backgrounds, both hostile and friendly, date Mark to be the first written, with dates from around about 65 to 70 AD, and John to be the last written from about 70 to 100 AD. There are other dates put forward outside of these windows, but generally these are rejected on the basis of internal and external evidence. The Gospels fall into subsets of 3+1. That is to say that Matthew, Mark and Luke are more similar to each other than they are to John. That is in language, themes and phraseology, and in the order. The three have come to be known as the Synoptic Gospels, from the Greek for same vision. Amongst the many differences in style between the Synoptics and John is that the Synoptic Gospels often show Jesus using parables to express his teachings. While John doesn't actually use parables in his accounts, he uses phrases such as "I am." So Jesus would say terms like I am the way, the truth and the life, for example, which is what I use on my YouTube channel. So that was just a short intro to the subject. But if you have any further questions, just post them in the comments below. The next video in this series will be on how do we know who the authors of the Gospels actually were. Again, thank you for listening. Please feel free to comment below, and as always, may God bless you in your search for the truth.